Has a lead, 15-10, touchdown Chargers!
What's up, guys? Welcome into a brand new episode of Chargers Weekly. Doing this a little bit early because the schedule was just released. Taping this on a Wednesday evening, and I am pleased to be joined by Matt Money Smith. There's nobody I'd rather break the schedule down with than you, my friend. I guess I was thinking this. Let's go in quarters, and at the top, just your main takeaways. Looks like 3 primetime games.
Yeah, I think so. A few things. One, I was completely wrong about the opener. You know, the NFL certainly is just looking to break a record for the most ever watched opener in the history of, you know, the NFL by putting the Ravens there instead of late in the season when it's, you know, projecting a consequential game for perhaps the number 1 seed. But I think what it says is the league does not have a lot of confidence in the Chargers. I think that's one of my takeaways is, you know, we know what SoFi is, how beautiful SoFi is, and to only get 1 primetime game there, you know, the Monday nighter against Kansas City, or the Sunday nighters at Kansas City. I'm sorry, the Monday nighter against Baltimore. You know, to showcase what is, you know, one of the prime stadiums in the NFL tells me that they don't have faith. They don't, you know, they're afraid to put this team, you know, in premium games late in the season at the Patriots, at the Raiders late, Denver late, Tampa late. You know, the latest premium game you would say would be December 8th at Kansas City, a Sunday nighter. Now, of course, you can flex late, and that's fine, but that's probably my initial impression, Chris, is they didn't send us to Germany. There was only 1 primetime game at home, 3 total. Amazon Prime didn't even want us after having Justin Herbert kick off the first ever Amazon Prime game in Thursday Night Football history. So, hey, chip on your shoulder, man. There's a lot of people that don't think this is going to be a team that's competing for the division or for a playoff spot. Otherwise, I think the schedule would have looked drastically different.
Yeah, you said 4 games. You were closer than me. I said 5. I just thought the Harbaugh effect would get this team on national television a lot more than 3 times. But, hey, I look at that Cincinnati game as a potential flex if they're playing well with Joe Burrow versus Justin Herbert. I think NBC can flex a little bit earlier than Monday Night Football. And, yeah, man, I go through it. And you said the Amazon didn't want them. The last time they were on Amazon, they got blown out by the Raiders. And right. I think that's a nice way to start. Let's just break down this first quarter of the season. September 8th against the Las Vegas Raiders from SoFi Stadium. So many storylines in this one, man. Like that game was the reason we are in the position that we're in now with Jim Harbaugh as the head coach of the LA Chargers. You got Tom Telesco, his first game as general manager of the Raiders, going back to SoFi like he never left. Joe Alt versus Max Crosby. I mean, there's so many little mini storylines within a big one, which is revenge on the minds of the Chargers.
Yeah, look, it's your chief rival, and you bookend the season. Week 1, Week 18. You know, I know we're focusing on the first quarter here, but yeah, it's a perfect way to start the season. I mean, hey, guess what? I'm here. We're, you know, there's a lot of new faces here because of what happened on that Thursday night when they dropped 63, 62 on you. And I think it's a perfect way to set the tone and to start the season. I think you look at the Raiders, either you're going to have Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell starting at quarterback. You've got a healthy Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. We hope that they make it through training camp healthy. Thule, Bud Dupree, who was just signed. We can get into that a little bit. And, you know, let's go. Those 3 guys, we know what it looked like in that first one, you know, when Khalil Mack was signed against the Raiders in that offensive line. They have not done a whole lot to upgrade that particular group. So that's going to be a defensive line, you know, that's going to be a defensive line battle. No more Josh Jacobs. That's a perfect, to me, it's a perfect way to start the season. It is. Look, would I have preferred it to be in Las Vegas? Maybe. You know, the actual scene of the crime. That would have been kind of cool. And then have the last one at home. But we'll take it. You know, we'll take it. Division game, chief rival, like you said, 62 to whatever. Tom Telesco's there as a general manager. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and with Harbaugh
and a winnable game.
It's her winnable game to begin. I think that's what kind of stands out to me at the beginning of this season too, buddy. You have a game where you have Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew under center against a rebate Chargers team. And then in week 2, you go to Carolina. So you got Bryce Young in week 2 and Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell in week 1.
Right.
Carolina, the worst team in the NFL last year, and it's going to take some time for them to get back to just respectability. So an awesome opportunity to go 2-0 in your first 2 games.
Yeah, it's set up, especially considering what that next chunk of games looks like. So you got your first quarter, and it's a heck of a lot better starting 2-0 instead of 0-2. We know that for sure. Looking at last year, and now things change. We thought the Titans game was a lock as a win, and they managed to cough that one up in week 2 last year, and they're staring at 0-2. But you feel pretty good about this. The Raiders at home instead of the Dolphins at home to start the season last year, to try to get off on a positive, to build some momentum, to believe in all that this coaching staff has preached, all the changes that have been made, how different this offense is going to look. A lot of new faces, the winning attitude, and if you were to ask me, hey, what 2 teams do you want to start the season? Carolina would clearly have been one. Vegas, Tennessee. You think about some of the teams that have really kind of had a big time, sort of change or performed poorly last year. Denver with Bo Nix, that kind of thing. I know I'm rambling now, but yeah, what I'm getting at, good way to start. You feel pretty good about those first 2 weeks being winnable games.
Yeah, and you look at the coaching matchup the first two weeks as well. Like Antonio Pierce was an interim coach last year, so his first full year as a head coach. Dave Canales, his second ever NFL game coaches versus Jim Harbaugh. So you like the coaching matchup, and you just like the way the first 2 weeks shake out. And then it gets a little more challenging because you go to Pittsburgh, back-to-back games on the East Coast, Money. We were just talking out loud. It's like, do the Chargers stay on the East Coast or do you get back? And I think with charter flights, it's probably easy to get back these days, but who knows? So you go from 2 quarterbacks who don't have a ton of experience to likely Russell Wilson, a Mike Tomlin-led Pittsburgh Steelers team that's always tough. And by the way, it's their home opener. Yeah.
So to 2 Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, to Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes. So that's what you get. Exactly. A 4th-round pick out of Purdue, maybe, or Gardner Minshew, a journeyman traveler, and Bryce Young. And then you go to likely Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes. A lot tougher. Steelers are good. They rebuilt that offensive line with their first 2 picks, in Fatanu and Zach Frazier. We know they added someone we like a lot in Roman Wilson into that wide receiver room, got rid of some of the negativity that was in there, trying to balance that thing out. We know they love to run. This is going to look, that's going to be a physical game. It's going to be a physical line of scrimmage game. You got Ogunjobi, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt. They signed Patrick Queen in the offseason versus Bosa, Mack, Thule. That's Bud Dupree, who of course was drafted in the first round by the Steelers. So you've got a line of scrimmage game, and that's look, that's kind of what I look at is you're going to have a very physical brand of football be played on the 22nd, and then the very next week you got Kansas City at home, and you're going to be pretty beat up. Is kind of the one thing that does stick out to me there on that front.
Yeah. Silver lining, it's in September. It's not it's not Steelers and Chiefs in December, but let's get back to week 4, Kansas City Chiefs. So your first 2 home games of the year are divisional games. And I think it's you bring up a great point about having to play the Steelers and then coming back, but I do think it's an opportunity to get your sea legs to, for Jim to kind of see what he has in his first 3 games, and then a huge test at home against the Super Bowl champs, and an opportunity to go 2-0 in the division before your early week 5 bye, which we've seen before. But I don't know. Do you like seeing the Chiefs this early?
Well, I'll say this. It is the first time that I can remember, and I'm not saying this in a snarky fashion. I'm being dead serious. It's the first time that I know it's minimal, but that the Chargers will not be on the lesser side of the rest, because the Chiefs will have a Sunday night football road game the week before in Atlanta. Now it's, a matter of hours. We're going to be on the road in Pittsburgh with a 10 a.m. Pacific start. They're going to be at a 5 p.m. from Atlanta. So at least it's not like the Chiefs playing Thursday night football and then you get them, which always seemed to be the case for whatever reason whenever we faced Kansas City.
Yeah.
It's like, why are they always coming off a mini bye or a bye or something? And at least this week, there's a little bit of that. But I would add this, too. I saw a graphic. The Chargers will travel the most miles this year of any team in the NFL. It's like 26,000. To put that in perspective, I think the Commanders will travel the fewest at 10,000. So an extra 16,000 miles on top of the team that travels the fewest. I'm wondering if that has something to do with the Thursday Night Football. They're like, hey, this team is already going to be gassed from travel. They have got a lot of miles they're flying. So maybe do them a little bit of a favor and cut them some slack on the short week with the Thursday Night Football not being in there.
Man, so yeah, you're right. At Carolina, at Pittsburgh, you have to go to Atlanta in December, which we'll get to. At Cleveland, which is basically the East Coast. So a ton of miles being logged, which is why it would be interesting early in the year. Like, would you stay out on the East Coast? But, to your point,
I just don't think they're far enough, Chris. Like, to me, that's more of a Northeast conversation. I think because, I think we always think west to east when we don't think south to north. The thing with going to to New York, to Boston is we're down here, they're up here. So you're not only going coast to coast, but you're going from the bottom. We're 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours in a car from Mexico. They're 2.5 hours from Canada. So it's like you forget that that's what you're doing as well. So the flights are more in the same latitude that we're in. So a flight to Charlotte is probably about 4 hours on the charter. A flight to Pittsburgh is probably $350 on the charter, so they're not as bad. I'd be really surprised if they stayed out there that early in the season.
If it was like Carolina, Atlanta, like there you go. That makes sense. They're a
maybe
few hours apart, right? Like that could be something. But yeah. So September, 2 road games.
And by the way, the other thing there too, Chris, is like high school's playing, college is playing. Like, where are you going to practice? Where are you going to stay? Where are you going to practice? You've got high school football. You've got college football all going on at that time. You probably fly to you fly to IMG or something. They're playing football at that time. So that's the other kind of weird part. Sorry.
The old go to the Greenbrier in West Virginia.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Right between the two.
Week 5 bye. I know you don't like those early buys, but here we are again.
Yeah, you don't get the benefit, as a team. You're talking about playing every single week from October 13th until January 4th. Like that, or 5th. That is a long stretch with no weeks off to try to get your body to recover. So, especially when you're playing a very physical brand of football, like we're gonna see the Chargers play. So, would have been nice to see that in more like 8, 9, 10 area. But is what it is. Same thing as we had last year. The early bye
at Denver. So you play the division in the first 6 weeks. You play everybody once,
right?
You mentioned it. Bo Nix will probably be the starter for the Denver Broncos on the road. Has not been an easy place for the Chargers to play. Then you go at Arizona, the first primetime game on the Chargers schedule. And money, that's an hour flight, right? That's no sweat. It's on the West Coast. And it comes against a Kyler Murray-led team, a defense that is very similar to what we saw here the last couple of years with Brandon Staley and what Jonathan Gannon does, and an opportunity to pick up a non-conference win there on October 21st.
That's a frisky team. I really like what Monty Ossenford has done there. It's going to be a frisky team. It's a good that look. They had to get bodies on defense. Defensively, they were an absolute, they play hard, but they just didn't have a lot of talent. But, they at least tried to put some sort of Band-Aids around their offensive line. Of course, they drafted Marvin Harrison Jr., somebody that Jim Harbaugh knows very well. So we'll get to see him. But James Conner, they still play very physical. They run the heck out of the ball, between the tackles. With him, and I think Jonathan Gannon did a pretty darn good job of coaching that defense up last year. So, but like you said, I think just so much is going to change between now and then. I think for us, this is more of a logistics talk. Yeah, you got a Sunday night or you got a Monday night game, and it's not in Atlanta. It's not in New England. It's not in Cleveland. It's not in Carolina. It's in Arizona. So instead of getting home at 4 a.m. on Tuesday morning, or 5 a.m., which we have before on Tuesday morning because of the time you get out of that East Coast and you fly across the country, you're probably looking at, maybe head to pillow round 1, 1 a.m. That's a lot more doable than head to pillow around 6 a.m., which we've done before.
Last 2 games in this quarter, the Saints at home. So you had that short week, like you mentioned, but you're greeted by Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints. That's Sunday on Fox. And then you go to Cleveland. So another long trip to close out that second quarter of the year. Deshaun Watson under center likely for them. And, the Browns had a heck of a team last year with so much flux at the quarterback position. Playing the AFC North is tough, man. You got to play all 4 of those teams this year. Yeah, and you know what?
Cleveland shouldn't be too bad November 3rd. That's that the lake effect can really get you out there. It can get cold, man. And when you're there in September, it can get hot and sticky. So that's kind of a nice little sweet spot for Cleveland weather-wise. Anything can happen. There could be a freak snowstorm or something, or just a cold, a cold wave that comes through. But I think in general, because again, it's hard to project football here. We'll try, but let's do average.
Let's just project weather.
Temperature, Cleveland, November 3rd. And let's see what we get. Normal high temperatures, right around 57 is your high.
Love it.
So your low is 37. That's a pretty big, it's 20-degree spread, but when it's 10 a.m. and you're playing, which is, 1 p.m. out there, you're playing 1 to 4, you're probably going to be a lot closer to, the 50s than the 30s. And that's a big win. And that's the same thing with Pittsburgh in September. That can get cold. We know that full well. So that's first half, at least you knock out 2 of those sort of Rust Belt, just gnarly river, lake, cold places in December and January, and at least you're not there for those.
It looks like really only 2 potential cold weather games.
We got 2, all right. We got 2 that are going to punch you right in the solar plexus, especially New England, Week 17. Make no bones about it. That is, boy, I feel for Shannon Farron. It's one thing to get into a football outfit and run around and tackle each other, but when you're doing sidelines for the radio broadcast and you just got to stand there for 3 hours, that's a rough go.
Should we buy Shannon a new parka for Sunday night at Kansas City and then December 20th to 29th at the Patriots?
Yeah.
Wow, it's gonna be cold. All right, so here we go. This is where it gets really favorable for the Chargers in terms of just being in Los Angeles during the month of November. After Cleveland, November 3rd, 3 straight home games. You got the Titans, you got the Bengals, and you got the Ravens. It's not on Thanksgiving, but it's Thanksgiving week. So we got the Harbaugh brothers Thanksgiving week. They kick off the week, Monday Night Football. We knew that was going to be prime time, but let's start with the Tennessee Titans, a team I think similar to Carolina, kind of in rebuilding mode, and an opportunity to just maybe stack a win there.
You would hope. Look, they spent a lot of money. They brought in a lot of free agents. Thought they did a pretty darn good job of. It's kind of a weird team because you've got a quarterback in his second year, and they drafted well. Obviously, we love Latham. They wanted Alt, and when the Chargers took Alt, they took Latham to add to Skoronski. They signed Cushenberry, who had settled in as a pretty darn good center in the offseason. So the whole left side of that line, is going to be a very physical, good, and now granted, they get rid of Derrick Henry, but they bring in Tony Pollard. So maybe they want someone a little bit more athletic, a little bit more speed, as opposed to what Henry offered. Told me I get to take a pick between Pollard and Henry. I'll take Pollard. Thank you very much. So that helps. But then, they've got DeAndre Hopkins. They've got Calvin Ridley. They signed Tyler Boyd, which I get, right? Like, that makes sense. Let's get our second-year receiver, professional receivers, guys that can catch the ball, guys that have done it at a very high level. We saw, DeAndre was his go-to guy in a number of those games. Well, now you add Ridley, now you add Boyd. It's pretty good. It's not, and I think Levis showed enough last year with some competent pass catchers around him. I think that's, Okonkwo's a really good, underrated tight end that isn't talked about a lot. So that's going to be interesting on the offensive side of the ball. And then defensive, they had Tavondre Sweat, the biggest guy, the only true nose in the draft, to Jeffrey Simmons. Interior of that Chargers line is going to get tested in this one. That's the thing that you're going to want to keep your eye on. Make sure those guys are going forward and not back with Sweat and Simmons out there.
Yeah, they drafted Sweat a lot earlier than I think people anticipated him getting selected. Yeah. So Tennessee, and then November 17th, this is a CBS game, 125. Feels like a Romo Nance game.
Like Cincinnati a Romo Nance game, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like that would be, and I said that could get flexed, but it seems like they have that in a position where they may protect that one.
Joe Burrow, and they will
Justin Herbert.
And the Bengals are going to get a mini bye on that because they're playing the Ravens on Thursday Night Football the week before. So the Bengals are going to get some extra rest. We're going to probably Chargers probably would come up pretty physical game against the Titans. I mentioned that defensive front, the left side of that line, how physical that's going to be. So advantage Cincinnati in terms of the extra 3 days of rest. Now they're going to play Baltimore the week before, so they're going to get the snot knocked out of them as well in a very physical game, but they're going to get 3 more days to recover. So that's the one negative on that front.
And here we go, the Harbaugh brothers. And, we focus so much on those guys, rightly so, but this is a special game for Joe Ortiz. You got Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins and Hayden Hurst and Bozeman and Allen. I mean, there's a lot of Ravens on this team, too. Yeah. It's going to be a fun game. And this is going to be maybe the most physical game of the year.
Yeah, you would assume so. I think there's, look, they're calling it Baltimore West. I mean, these two teams want to play the same way. You ask around the league, and pretty much you're going to get Baltimore, San Francisco, Cleveland, named as the most physical team in the league. And the Chargers want to get in that conversation. That's what they're looking to do. And so we'll see what they, I would love to see when the what's it called? The Baltimore bye is. I don't have like a big grid, so I'm just kind of scrambling all over the place because we're both coming off a game on Sunday. They're playing the Steelers, like we mentioned, Chargers playing the Bengals. So you both got the same rest going into that Monday nighter. But of course, we're going to get hosed a little bit just because of the early bye.
Hey, Thursday night can flex too, right? There's a window towards the end of the year where they're allowed to flex as well, right?
Hey, I'm fine. Don't flex us in there. I'm all good.
We're good. We're good. So rounding out the third quarter of the season at Atlanta, Kirk Cousins, Raheem Morris. I should have mentioned, so the Bengals, another first-time head coach. That would be the third on the schedule. And then Raheem Morris, first time.
Well, actually,
two-time head coach, Coach Tampa, but new to the Falcons, let's say. So yeah, a tough game with Kirk at the helm. That they're going to score a lot of points. Maybe it could be Michael by December 1st. Never know.
You never know. Maybe it could be Penix by then.
But yet another East Coast trip, money. Going to Atlanta.
And I'll tell you the one thing that I think is worth mentioning on our. Hopefully, this is compelling content. I hope it is. We're trying, folks. Trying to make schedule talk as compelling as possible. But the one thing that jumps out to me there, number one, Atlanta has a late bye, so they're going to be coming off a bye. Chargers coming off the Ravens game Monday night on a short week. Thank you, NFL. Appreciate that. Good looking out. So on top of that, their East Coast games, all 10 a.m.ers. Like there's not the Panthers 10 a.m., Steelers 10 a.m., Cleveland 10 a.m., Atlanta 10 a.m.
It's good.
So these are true East Coast time zone early starts for a West Coast team. That's the one part where they did not do the Chargers any favors by having those 1 o'clock, those late window starts on the East Coast. All these games are 10 a.m. Pacific time. You're on the bus. You're up at 5 a.m. Pacific. You're on the bus by 7 a.m. Pacific. You're kicking off by 10 a.m. It's a little gnarly.
Yeah, you know what? I remember. I feel like the Chargers, maybe it was 18 or 19, where they had a lot of those games and they played okay. But you're right. Going west to east, I guess early especially. We think about it from like our perspective too. It's like, oh yeah, you get the game over with early as opposed to waiting around and hurry up and wait. But yeah, you're right. That's another kind of element to this schedule that is just a little bit different. I guess I was expecting more kind of puzzle pieces like Thursday night games, extra bye, mini bye here, mini bye there. It's very straightforward, man.
Yeah.
It's like,
and by the way, Baltimore's bye is week 14, so they will have not had a bye by the time they show up. So that's, again, when you're talking about that brand of football, that physical brand of football, even Steven, Chargers bye is week 5, and theirs is until week 14. So you get helped out a little bit there.
All right, so let's go down the home stretch here. December 8th, Sunday Night Football, the Chargers' third primetime game. This is an annual tradition. The Chiefs and Chargers will play in primetime. No bones about it. At Arrowhead, who knows what these teams are going to look like December 8th, Money? You never know.
Would you care to guess what Kansas City's got going the week before?
Bye.
Black Friday game. Mini bye.
Oh,
so
okay. That's right. They play the Raiders, right?
Raiders in the Black Friday game. So again, always never fails. Like, just never fails. There's always something. You give the Chargers a little scrap, like, hey, they're playing Sunday night the week before on the road. Chargers go in and they'll be on a little bit of a mini bye there from the Black Friday game. Early December, Kansas City. That's going to be cold. Sunday Night Football night game kicks off at 7:20 local time. It's going to be a cold one. And look, this is Michigan football, right? You're built for it. So that's the good news. It's not a spread it out, run around, and be a track team. It's a strap it up, knock some heads. So, maybe that's a little bit of a benefit in these cold weather games, is that you're used to getting hit hard every single time the ball is snapped, and it doesn't affect you as much. That's what you hope, at least.
I was just going to say too, like, how many Big Ten games did we wake up and watch Michigan like at 10 a.m. and just knocking people's heads off?
Run the ball 30 straight times in the second half against Penn State. Yeah, 100%.
That's the brand of football, though, buddy, that I think that these guys are built for. Like, you're built to go. Like, you play in Los Angeles, but you have a team that's built to win in December in hostile, cold potential environments. You get a couple home games here to close out the home schedule. Tampa Bay, so Baker Mayfield and company, and then the Denver Broncos come in week 16. Two very winnable games as we look at this thing in May right now with Baker under center and I guess Bo Nix again.
Yeah, I think, look, we might as well we can go through the rest of them and just knock it out. But yeah, so obviously they lose a little bit of rest with the Sunday nighter in Kansas City, probably getting home somewhere around 4 a.m. on that one. Not ideal. Tampa's coming in on regular rest. So, you can just kind of get everything squared away. By then, the Broncos get a week 14 bye. So they're going to be in a little bit better shape probably than the Chargers are for that week 16 game. They're coming off a home game against the Colts. So you'd say probably advantage Broncos there. So there's a lot of that I've noticed on this schedule. There's a lot of mini buys. There's a lot of Chargers have the negative rest. It's something that Warren Sharp talks about a lot and has tracked for a long time and believes makes a big impact. I know Jim Harbaugh heard me say it. He'd probably slap it out of my mouth because it's such a stupid excuse. But all I'm pointing out is Warren charts this. He charts wins and losses off of it, and he does believe it is worth anywhere from 3/4 to 1.5 wins versus losses, and all of the research that he's done. That's a lot, 8-9 versus 9-8, 9-8 versus 10-7. It's a pretty big difference when you're chasing a playoff spot. So they're going to have to overcome quite a bit in terms of negative rest to win these games, especially playing, like I said, the brand of football they're playing.
Though, after this Sunday night game, like Tampa Bay, Denver, at New England, who I don't think is going to be very good this year, and at Las Vegas, which is a 45-minute plane ride. Yeah. I mean, that last quarter, I think, is very favorable, especially if you're rolling. If you're playing good football, I mean, you could buzz through December and feel pretty good about that last quarter. On paper, it's us talking right now in May. The team would never say that, but I mean, like, if it lines up nicely, like you said, get Carolina early, get Vegas early, and then you close with Vegas, and then the 3 games before that, Tampa Bay, Denver at home, and at New England with Drake May and Gerard Mayo.
Yeah, I think those, the last two, what you're hoping is, and even with Denver, with Bo Nix and their quarterback situation and trading away Jerry Jeudy and just kind of how no Justin Simmons, resetting the fight. Like it feels like a reset year in Denver. It feels everybody's talking about how, and they're right, Matthew Judon, Christian Barmore, Juwan Bentley, Jonathan Jones is still there, like Jabril Peppers, Christian Gonzalez was just drafted. The defense is still good in New England, and it's nothing against Gerard Mayo. To think that, like, just to project, oh yeah, defense is great. You had arguably the greatest defensive coach in the history of the league that is no longer there calling the defense. I know that, you still have, Gerard Mayo, who was on his staff, is there, and they're hoping that it's a seamless transition. But the idea that Bill Belichick leaves and there's no fall off on that side of the ball, and we know kind of offensively, I like Jacoby Brissett as a bridge quarterback, but if in a division with Buffalo and Miami, and if the Jets are healthy and how good they were last year with no quarterback to pile up 7 wins and a couple really close losses, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, maybe they're so far out of it that it's just, hey, let's get Drake May some reps. Let's this is now this portion where we want to get him out there and get some reps. That's kind of what I think you're hoping, Look, the Raiders were competitive last year. They were a good team. They played some good defense down the stretch. They knocked off the Chiefs, and kept them from getting that number 1 overall seed on that Christmas game. So, the hope is they're mailing it in. Now that we've kind of gone through the whole schedule and the quarters, Chris, I can talk myself into it through my powder blue and gold glasses, and I can see 9 and I can see 10. I can talk myself into that. We did this last year. We talked ourselves into 10 or 11 wins last year and then ended up with 5. So
that's about what we say in May.
No, but look, that's what it's a podcast that fans are listening to.
Yeah.
So let's go through it. Raiders at home win, at Panthers win. I'm not gonna project losses, but I'll reserve myself from giving wins to games that I see as being a challenge. I go to at Broncos again. I even see that as being a challenge. They seem to split with the Broncos every single year. So
that's definitely a challenge.
Cardinals, I think they can win that game. That's 3. Saints at home, I think they can win that game. Browns, I won't project. Titans at home, I think they win that game. That's 5. Bengals, Ravens, I won't project. So Atlanta, I think they can win that game. That's 6. Kansas City won't project. Tampa, even though they were frisky last year, I still think they can win that game. It's at home. So that's 7. Broncos at home, that's 8. Patriots on the road, I'm already at 9. And I'm not even... So
and you're abstaining. You're abstaining from games.
That's what I mean. Just on paper, the teams that they are playing from 2023, if we are to believe in what we believe and what Jim Harbaugh is going to bring here with this running game, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins staying healthy all year, and I know the wide receiver room, I feel pretty good about it. I've said how much I like Josh Palmer. You take the top off with DJ Shark. I went back and watched all of his snaps, and there's some impressive routes out there, man. There are some contested 50-50 catches that he shakes a defender and scores a touchdown. There is ankle breaking out there on double moves. There's him just wide open that, for whatever reason, wide open, and there's no passes direction. Bryce Young just doesn't see him. I'm excited about that. Obviously, McConkey I'm very excited about. I'm excited about a tight end that can block in Will Dissly, something that we have not seen here since Hunter Henry left. So, there's reasons for me to feel good about that. It doesn't mean anything until they strap it up and play it. But I think what I'm getting at, Chris, is it could have been so much worse. There could have been. The Rams are going to have to, and the Jets are going to have to play 2 Thursday night games. Like, there are teams that are playing 2 Thursday night games. The Chargers don't have 1. Their primetime games aren't that bad. It's a Monday nighter here, and it's a Monday nighter in the same time zone and a 45-minute flight away. So to me, there's a lot of good there. The big negative is the early bye to try to get your guys some rest, more toward the middle of the season. They don't have that. And like I said, it seems like there's a lot of net negative rest from other teams coming off mini buys. 4 or 5 different times this year. So
I think that there's
go ahead.
I think that there's an advantage to having a new coach, especially an experienced new coach. When you play the teams at the beginning of the year, like the Raiders and the Chiefs, like, listen, you could look at all the Michigan tape you want to, you could look at all the San Francisco 49er tape, but there's going to be an element of surprise that may catch the Raiders and the Chiefs and the Steelers off guard a little bit, especially if you're looking at like the last 4 or 5 years of how the Chargers did things offensively and even defensively. It's completely different. Now, you could say the same thing with the Raiders with Luke Getsy, but I just think as a whole, the operation and everything that they're doing philosophically is counter to what they used to be. So you can use that to your advantage, I think, the first quarter of the year. And yeah, it's not ideal to have a week 5 bye, but if you can enter that week 5 bye 3-1 with 2 wins against AFC West opponents, I mean, man, you got the confidence. Then you play a rookie quarterback coming out of that bye. You have a game against Kyler Murray. You come home for the Saints, a smash mouth game against the Browns. But I just think it's so important. We saw what happened last year when they got off to a rough start. It snowballed. It snowballed and it snowballed. Getting off to a good start and potentially going 2-0 in the division, like that's what I would have my eyes on if I'm a Chargers fan. The Steeler game, hey man, that's going to be a tough game. It's their home opener. If you could steal that one, fantastic. But if you can get 3-1 going into week 5, God, that would be a great start for Jim Harbaugh in his first year with the Chargers.
Yeah, to me, I think, it's even just one. And I know I'm not trying to kind of jump you here or be too contrary, but honestly, Chris, like for me, thinking back these last couple of years, it's just 1-0. Just getting that first win in week 1, just especially with a new coaching staff, with a new philosophy, they're going to be busting their tails in training camp. And to take on a team that absolutely wrecked you last year, humiliated you, and in their post, and screaming Raiders on their way to, 63-21, and they're doing their Raider chants, and Antonio Pierce is in his presser saying, I wanted 70. I wanted, You got Bosa, Mack. Those are the defensive players out there. Bosa, Mack, Thule, those guys, I would assume are going to be supremely motivated to make a statement in that game after scoring. They don't want them to score 6.3 points. So I'm going to be, and again, there's no Josh Jacobs. They did not upgrade their offensive line. You're still going to have either Aiden O'Connell or, I think Gardner Minshew. He's solid. He wasn't great in Indianapolis last year. I know they were competing for, a playoff spot in week 18, but that was more, I thought, Shane Steichen's brilliant play calling and sort of the way that they had just had games break for them, as opposed to Gardner being a really good quarterback all season long. Just getting that first win and then climbing on that plane to go to Carolina and seeing that opportunity in front of you for that second win. And then I think we're getting to what you're talking about, right? Well, now there's like, hey, now we're flying home across the country with a second win, and we like what's going on here, man. Last year, 0-2 in an inexplicable loss to Tennessee. Just one brain cramp after another, wide open 70-yard bombs that are going over your head because of busted coverages. And the inability to run the ball, and a 3-and-out in overtime. And you're sitting there going, we're really 0-2 and going to play the Vikings right now. Like, think about just how different. Like I said, when we started this, you tell me, hey, you know who your opponents are, how you want to get this thing started. Yeah. Raiders, week 1, 63-21. Let's go. Let's wash that out of the mouth immediately. And then take a trip to Carolina, get that road trip off, and you feel pretty darn good with 2 very tough games at Pittsburgh and Kansas City at home.
This is what excites me about this Chargers team. Jim Harbaugh knows about rivalries, right? Sometimes it feels to me like Raider Week wasn't what it should have been. Like when Marty Schottenheimer was the Chargers head coach, Raider Week, like the fans felt it. Like Nick Hardwick's on the staff now. Nick Hardwick knows what Raider Week's all about. You don't think Jim Harbaugh knows what Raider Week's all about? Exactly. It's going to be a different vibe. It is going to be a different vibe in the locker room. And Money, to a man, everybody I've talked to, every player I've talked to, they've said some form of, you are not going to want to play us. You are not going to want to play us, and you will, like, I think Junior Colson said last week, like you will lose next week because you played us this week.
Right.
Like that's the type of mentality that they want to bring. Physicality. And I just think that that's missing in today's game sometimes, the rivalry and actually like getting up for games and having a coach that just, he knows what it means. He knows what it means to the fans. Like he knows what the game means, right? You know, and he heard all about it. And then he started whooping on Ohio State. So it's a perfect opponent for week 1 for Jim Harbaugh.
100%. Like I said, saw so many of those Stanford games, and you better believe USC, even though big game was big game against Cal, and that was their big rivalry, but Pete and the Trojans were the king of the hill, and he was all about not beating them, but physically beating them and humiliating them. And I think about Jim Schwartz getting a little loose with his lips when he was the head coach of the Lions, and Harbaugh winning that game and knocking his back off in the post-game handshake. You know, like, he's a competitor. And so this is a Raider, you know, and remember, Jim was a coach for the Raiders. That was the first place he coached. Quarterback, you know, it was assistant quarterbacks or something like that before he took the job at San Diego. So he knows the other side of it. He knows what Charger week was. That's when Phillip Rivers was a Charger. And you know, he you know how intense that rivalry was when Phillip was with the quarterback and the Chargers were kicking ass in the aughts, you know, going into the 2010s, right in that range. Yeah. Like it's going to be fun. It's going to be a perfect way to start the season.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I cannot wait for September 8th. Anything else that stands out to you before you want to touch
kind of
on
a cool,
Bud Dupree or something?
Selfishly, pretty cool preseason. Fact that, you know, you never know who they're going to send you. We get to go to Cowboys, get to go to the Jerry Dome. It's going to be fun. You know, of all the places they can send you, we tend to go to San Francisco, go to Arizona. We've been to Seattle. You know, that was kind of it's always sort of this West Coast ring. And I thought for sure, since we're playing Arizona, I was like, we'll probably play San Francisco, or maybe we'll go up to Seattle. That'll be fun. And then when I saw Dallas, I was like, that's cool. It's not too far. It's 2.5 hour flight, and get to hang out at the Jerry Dome for a preseason game if you got to sit there. And it'll be interesting. How does Jim Harbaugh treat the preseason? You know, does he treat it like Brandon Staley did, where nobody played, period? Or does he treat it like Andy Reid treats it, where you guys might get a quarter? You know, you guys might get a series. You might get a quarter. Who knows? It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. But you get Seattle and the Rams here, and then you get the Cowboys on Saturday, August 24th. That's going to be kind of fun to get out there.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So the games are going to be on CBS 2, and that's the big intrigue is how does Jim Harbaugh approach it? Like, is Justin Herbert going to play in the preseason? Maybe he does.
I think he will. I would be very surprised. You know, I would be very surprised if he doesn't treat it, you know, considerably different than how Brandon Staley treated it. Look, Andy Reid plays those guys. He will play them a quarter. He will play his starters a quarter. Mike Tomlin will play his guys a full quarter. Like, these dudes, these old school
Belichick
don't mess around guys. They play their guys. They do not care. They believe you need to get hit in the mouth. They're all about it. So I'm sure Jim Harbaugh is probably from that school as well. I mean, it's August 24th. You got 2 weeks before your first game. You know, the way they do it now with the three instead of 4 preseason games.
And so it's fun because August 10th is Mike McDonald, his former D coordinator, and his son who's on the staff.
Right.
So you get to play the Seahawks, and then the Rams. You get some good work with McVay. We don't know anything about joint practices yet, do we? I don't think anything's been announced, has it? We got 5 teams in Southern California doing training camp.
Yeah, I have not seen anything. Because, you know, a lot of times that's coaching relationships is how those things come up. You know, remember Anthony Lynn and Sean Payton were together on the Cowboys staff. And obviously Kyle Shanahan and Brandon were close just through the Sean McVay relationship. So, be interesting to see. But, you know, they're obviously not going to do joint practices with the Raiders. They do play the Saints. We're not going to go to Jack Hammett
Sports Complex, are we?
Exactly. I don't know if they'll do it with the Saints because you play them in the preseason. You know, maybe the Cowboys. Maybe get a little bit in there with the Cowboys, who are just right up in Oxnard. If they want to come down the road a little bit, that could be fun.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Maybe the Rams.
Yeah.
Hey, Bud Dupree. We didn't talk about Bud Dupree. I know there. So Jesse Minter, I think, says, okay, if we get to keep Mack and Bosa, and I have Thule, and Morgan Fox is on the roster, we're just continuing to add to our strength on the defense. So to bring in a veteran like Dupree, who I think started 16 games for the Falcons last year, 6.5 sacks, and you put him on the other side of Joey or Khalil or Thule, man, the competition in the edge room just got a little bit deeper.
He looked good. I went back and watched every one of his pressures from last year. The 6.5 sacks, I'd say probably half of them, maybe. I'd say 3 of them, maybe. He kind of walked into. The coverage was really good downfield. It was, an elongated play and managed to be there to clean it up. But a few of them, man, he is flying off the edge and beating his dude off the snap. And it's kind of been everything. There was speed there. There was some power. I watched him dust a couple tackles and just pick them up and run them right into the quarterback. The pressures are great. The sacks are one thing, the 6.5, but when you go through all of his pressures or his beaten by defenders, those sort of things, it's impressive. He's still got juice, man. He's a pass rusher. That's what he does. He's maybe a DPI, designated pass rusher, more than anything. There were some runs. I went and looked at some of the run tackles, and he's a guy that gets after the quarterback. So you need those guys. We talked about the edge room, and we were a little concerned about it. If you got to let Bosa go, and are you going to draft one high? And can we trust Mack at 33? So now you got some real depth at that position with Dupree and the flexibility that Thule and Joey Bosa give you out there as well.
Yeah, plus Fox. Like it's a really deep room.
Yeah,
it's a deep room. It's Chris Rumph. It's a big opportunity for Chris Rumph to.
Yeah, I forgot about Chris. Absolutely,
to show he belongs to in that room. So I love it. Post draft to pick up a guy like Chark and then Dupree. Joe Ortiz said, "Hey, we have different phases of this free agency thing. It doesn't end before the draft, and you're seeing some of these veterans that were added post draft. Do you think anybody else is in play? You look at the safety room. Corners.
I think so. Safety is still the one that's really a glaring, where there's not that vet. They added Christian Fulton, vet, to the corner room. They added Denzel Perriman, vet, to the linebacker room. They added Bud Dupree, vet, to the edge room. They added DJ Sharp. Everything that we talked about where we were like, hey, I don't know about that room. Running back, Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Tight end, Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst. The one room that has not gotten that addition yet is, safety, and Justin Simmons still out there, so there's still some safeties out there that they might be able to find some value and cash it in. I think they got great value for Chark. I think he's a perfect fit. And, and kind of what we talked about before, right, with Jerry Rice, you saw his comments this week about, what Brendan shared, how hot his dad was and how he called him and said, hey, that's it. I'm coaching you now. I'm your shadow. We're going to prove all these people wrong. So I'm sure Jim Harbaugh is taking advantage of that, saying, come on down, man. Come on down. We got no problem with Jerry Rice coaching our wide receivers up at practice. Feel free to get on down here. Coach Brennan up. Coach Ladd McConkey up, and Quentin, whoever you want to talk to, get on out there. Get with Sanjay, and let's knock it out, Jerry. You want to be an assistant wide receivers coach? Here's a polo. You're in, man. Let's do it. Let's make Brennan the best receiver in the league.
Please. Finally, have you seen the Chargers schedule release video yet?
I did, yes. Sims. So here's what I'll say. I'm not a big Sims guy. So initial viewing, I'm like, okay, I'm going to need to spend some time with this. I'm going to need to find all the Easter eggs. And
there's a lot of them.
Yeah, which there always are. So I'm trying to think if I saw any of them. Let me look at our schedule. Let me see if I remember seeing any. The Pittsburgh one was funny with Russell walking through the house. That was a really good one. I don't know if I remember any of the other ones.
Our former general manager was featured in week 18.
Oh, nice.
The Chiefs kicker was in the credits.
Wow.
So
talk about
check that
talk
out.
about topical immediately.
Quite the turnaround there.
Yeah, you idiot.
There was
what an idiot.
It was some good ones, man. They did a good job. They have a lot of Easter eggs in it. I'm not a huge. I don't know much about Sims either, but it's worth the.
It's all about.
You can watch
Easter
it like
eggs.
10 times, man. You can watch it like 10 times.
Yeah, I'll put some time into it.
Yeah, go
sure.
to week 18. There was also something else in week 18 that I thought was pretty funny that you would enjoy. Right. That's it, man. Anything else?
Nope. Get back to breaking this thing down next week. And obviously they're in the middle of phase 2 right now. A lot of great stuff going on out there. Without pads, there's been some really good little videos that they've been tweeting out. They do such a good job on the social channels. But just, the photos of Joe Alt looking like he's 10'6", not 6'8". It's been really fun.
Yeah, he's throwing people out of the club in that one picture. And you know what I thought was cool? Last thing, rookie minicamp, all the guys were wearing their full uniforms.
Yeah,
like full game uniforms. Like it's a different outfit right now. It's like this. Oh, yeah. This is how we tuck in our shirt. This is how we have our pants. This is how we leave a huddle. That was the one thing I gleaned from just the couple hours I was there, because you can't really take much from the field, but it's like orientation. It's like, hey, this is how the LA Chargers conduct business, basically.
Right.
Yeah. So
good deal.
Let's go.
We now know where and when. That is what we've got. So book your flights and let's get after it, everybody. We love seeing the Powder Blues on the road.
Let's go. Starting in Carolina after that Raiders game. All right. For Buddy, I'm Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly. We will see you next week.